reminder that do this as a memorial to me. So as Christians, we obviously take it to heart and listen whenever Jesus gives a command. But naturally, the question, how often should this memorial be observed and on what date? Well, as regards timing, Jesus gave this command after he had just finished eating the once-a-year Passover meal with his apostles. Then he instituted a special meal that would become the model for memorializing his death. Let's notice how the Bible record verifies this for us. Let's look together at chapter 22, and we'll start there in verse 16. So there's 22, verse 16, it reads, "And he said to them, I have greatly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." So Jesus proceeds to eat a Passover meal, and then notice in verse 19 and 20, he institutes this new observance. Also, he took a loaf, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This means my body, which is to be given behalf. Keep doing this in remembrance of me." Also the cup, and after they had the evening meal, he's saying, "This cup means the new covenant by virtue of my blood, which is to be poured out in your behalf." So as was stated, it was on the same evening or date of the Jewish Passover in which Jesus instituted this new observance. And according to the Hebrew Scriptures, the date of that Passover was always held on the 14th day of the Jewish month, Nisan. So in accord with that, true Christians today observe the memorial after sundown on Nisan 14, the same day that Jesus inaugurated it. It's interesting to note that various historians and encyclopedias make a record that for several centuries following Jesus' death, many professed Christians were called 14thers because they commemorated Jesus' death once a year on Nisan 14. But when you think of the significance that Jesus' death has had on mankind as a whole, would it make more sense to celebrate it maybe on a weekly or daily basis? Well, again, let's note how the original Christians were instructed. Let's turn our Bible to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and we'll read. That's 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 26. Here, referring to the Lord's evening meal, Paul wrote, "For as often as you eat this loaf and drink this cup, you keep proclaiming the death of the Lord until he arrives." Now, at first glance, when you see the word often, we might think frequently. But in the original Greek, Paul did not use the word that would be translated frequently. In this text, Paul used the word translated as often as, meaning every time that or whenever. So in fact, Paul was saying every time or when this occurs, you keep proclaiming the death of the Lord. So, as regards frequency, it's appropriate to observe the Lord's evening meal just once a year. It truly is a memorial. This concept of an annual observance to honor an important event is common not only in Bible times, but in today's times as well. Consider, for example, when a couple celebrates their wedding anniversary, or maybe when a nation remembers an important event in their history. The commemoration usually takes place once a year on the anniversary date. So in obedience to Christ's own instructions, keep doing this in remembrance of me, the 14th day of Nisan continues to be observed by his followers as a time for memorializing his death.